Karl Rove, former Deputy Chief of Staff for President George W. Bush and a very smart guy, and Katie Pavlich, townhall.com news editor, and both are Fox News contributors. Katie, let's start with you. I think we're being tested. I feel like we're being tested by the Russians, who are pretending as if they don't have control of hacking groups inside their borders. Am I wrong?
We are absolutely being tested, Brian, and the White House continues to say that the Russian government was not behind these attacks. Maybe they weren't, but they certainly were watching this cyber attack play out, as was China, as were other actors who have very serious and skilled cyber attack forces that they would be happy to use against the United States to cripple the economy and to pit Americans against each other. And it's not just on this cyber attack. We're seeing this now play out in the Middle East, where Hamas and Hezbollah are testing President Biden on his response there as his State Department negotiates in Vienna to get the United States back into the Iranian nuclear agreement. And in terms of the doctrine and what the Biden doctrine will be on foreign policy, you can look no further than the Obama doctrine when it came to Iran, and they appeased that regime, which of course is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the entire world, admitted that an influx of cash that they would receive as a result of that deal that we signed under Obama and got out of under Trump would lead to more terrorism, and went into it anyway. So when you're seeing this barrage of rockets on an ally, which is Israel, that's the bigger picture. There is the Iranians and how the Biden administration will respond to their terrorism outside of the nuclear agreement that we are trying to get back into.
Hey, Karl, when we open up the Biden doctrine, what page do we open up to find out his policy on Iran? Because we now know that was not a popular agreement in 2015. We know that Senator Schumer, Senator Cardin, Senator Menendez didn't sign off on it. He barely got over 40 Senate votes, and he had the majority in the Senate. And we know today that 53 state Democratic leaders signed a letter asking the administration to do a deal and saluted them for the indirect talks in Vienna, led by a lot of important Democrats. They want this deal done. So what is the Biden doctrine? Should they get it done?
Well, I'm definitely not. But notice who those 53 signatories were on the letter. They are the left wing of the left wing of the left wing of the Democratic Party,
including Keith Ellison.
Yeah, we're talking about sort of the complete left-wingers in the Democratic Party, the hard left, and many of them, frankly, critics of Israel. And so why not take Israel's greatest opponent in the region and the largest funder of terrorism in the region and make nice with them rather than standing by Israel? So no, this was to be expected at some point, at some time. I think it's not because the administration is being strong on Iran or standing behind the sanctions, but instead because it's not really clear what their policy is, except let's make a deal, and the left wants to push them in the direction of playing let's make a deal. I want to go back and say one thing though about the Colonial Pipeline. I was shocked when the president went out and was asked about this following his news conference, and rather than saying you were going to get these guys. And maybe he should have said also, we're talking to the Russians to try and understand whether they were involved in this or not, and they better not be because there'll be a price to be paid. What did he do? He sort of pivoted and started talking about how we needed to have education programs that meant more of our school children would be able to graduate with degrees in coding and become, cyber warriors. And of course, that will only take like 10 years. But we got an immediate problem. Let's talk about something namby-pamby way off in the future. It was a very strange response.
Right. And Katie, real quick, that would be free.
He walked away.
Yeah. And then he walked away. He leaned in and said no comment.
I'm not supposed to answer questions. Right. He said, no, I'm not supposed to be answering questions about this. You guys are bad. I didn't want to answer questions about it, and attempted to leave.
Right. Hey, I just wonder, Karl, if you told George W. Bush, don't answer any questions, I wonder how that would have went over.
Yeah, well, the issue was don't answer questions from Brian Kilmeade. That was the one rule, the golden rule.
And he was very successful
no
in that.
Questions.
Yeah, he was very successful in that, except for he let me do the play-by-play on the last T-ball game at the White House with Tim McCarver. That was pretty cool. Karl and Katie, thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.